Hi, y'all. Hey, hey. Hey, Susan. Y'all, I'm a little nervous. Y'all gonna have to bear with me here. I'm a little nerved up. I'm glad y'all here. I'm excited, though. I'm ready to get started. Y'all sent some really good questions in, so we're gonna try to get as much as possible. Hey. Thank you. I tried to put on some makeup today. Y'all remember makeup, from before COVID? Yeah. Tried to put some of that on today. Thank you. Hey. All right, so we're going to get started in just a few minutes. I have my notes here, so if y'all see me looking down, I'm such an educator. I have my notes all printed out, ready to go. Look at all my ESG friends. Hey, y'all. This is cool. I think I might like this. Thank you. Look at my True You family in here. Hey, True You family. Looks like I had a weird connection issue. Now look. Hopefully it holds up. It's not bad weather or anything. All right. So I'm gonna wait maybe about another minute or so. And then we'll go. Yeah, y'all do go hard. You right about that. True You family, stand up. We in here. I am going to try to record this for those that may want to rewatch it. I think Instagram will give me that option after I finish it. So I'm going to try my best to record it and post it right afterwards, okay? So I'm going to try real hard. And then I do have your questions that y'all submitted to the form that I had. If by chance you have another question, there's a little question box you can ask. We're going to try to alternate a little bit after I get Dr. McGowan in here, probably in about the next 15 or so minutes. So. Hey, if y'all are watching this, looking at the comments, go ahead and follow your True You people, especially all of us with the same doctor. You see we're in here, so I'll be hitting follow buttons. Check out my followers too, and the people that I follow. Typically, most of the people I follow are ESG folks, even if they don't have ESG in their name. So if you're looking for other ESG people like yourself or just interested in it, go ahead and look at my followers list. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started real quick. So I have some information about myself, especially for those that may not know me or may have just found me. And then we're going to go into our question and answer where I'm going to add Dr. McGowan in here so we can answer some questions that you all had. So first, let's do this disclaimer. I am not paid by True You, Dr. McGowan, or any ESG associated entity. I just love my True You family. That's just what it is. And so all these opinions, thoughts, all of this is my own. It just comes from my struggles in weight loss journeys over the last several years. And of course, my 11th month experience with ESG so far. So everything I'm telling you is me, my honest opinion, not sponsored, nothing like that. Okay, so disclaimer out of the way now. So I'm going to kind of glance back and forth. So hi y'all, I'm Kyra. For those who don't know me, I am a 37-year-old married mother of two. I have two children, ages 11 and 10. I live in Texas. I'm right outside of Texas, and by profession, I'm a professor at a community college. I teach English and composition. So that's my titles, so to speak. In this past August of 2020, I had endoscopic sleeve gastroplasty, which of course is what the ESG stands for. I have lost a total of of 105 pounds from my high weight, which was 276. High weight was about 2 weeks before ESG. And then since ESG, I've lost 99 pounds. So I am currently sitting at 171-ish, which is the least amount of weight that I have ever weighed in my adult life ever. And I think this might be about 9th, 10th grade weight. Honestly, I'm not sure. These are uncharted waters that I'm in now. So that's kind of my stats, so to speak. They're also in my bio if you'll click the link in my bio. For ESG. So how did I find ESG? And I probably found it like several of you found it through a basic internet search. I was looking for something that was non-surgical. More specifically, I was looking for something that was going to reduce my stomach capacity and make me feel fuller with the nutritious food. So I could eat, the salad, the grilled chicken and all that, and not the bad food, and still feel full for hours, which wasn't happening in previous weight loss journeys, regardless of the amount that I was eating. So I was doing a search, and I found an article about it. So after I read the article, I was intrigued, and I thought, this might be it. This could work. I immediately went to YouTube, searching for ESG patients, ESG folks, first-hand accounts of ESG. I found nobody, y'all. I didn't find anybody at all. I mean, nobody. The only people that I found speaking about ESG were a couple of doctors, and that's actually where I found my doctor, Dr. McGowan from True You. So once I saw Dr. McGowan, I saw a video that he had done, which is about 45 minutes long. It's a couple of years old now, but it was a video of a live ESG. So you could see inside of the stomach. He was performing the ESG live, and he was taking questions from the audience. So I listened to the questions, wrote down, some of the information. And after watching that procedure and, understanding what it was, listening to the questions and the answers and all that, it was like an epiphany, like light bulb moment. Like, okay, this is it. This is probably what I've been looking for the past 6 years or so. When I looked at my research, that's how long I had been looking for a medical intervention that wasn't VSG or bypass. So, after doing that, I contacted Dr. McGowan. I contacted 2 of my local doctors here in Texas, and ultimately chose to go with True You. And I pretty much went with True You for 3 reasons. The first reason was my doctor's skills and expertise. If you have done any research on ESG, you know it varies greatly from pre-op to post-op procedures, diets, level of expertise. It just varies across the ESG board on doctors and what they require, tests they require, all of that. So I decided to go with my Dr. McGowan because he had the most experience in that from the doctors that I had looked at, and he seemed like he understood me, especially during the consultation, and answered all of my questions, all of that. Second, information and education. So as an educator like myself, I wanted a teaching doctor. I wanted a doctor that not only would perform the technique, but that could actually teach me some things, that has taught others some things, and provided me with information along with his clinic and staff, that provided me with information to help ensure that I would be successful. I have never had to wonder what to do after ESG. The pamphlet they sent me with, once I booked the handbook and all that, it was enough. And they've always answered my questions. So I've never really had to seek advice from anyone outside of my True You medical professionals, because I've always felt informed by them. Excuse me, too much talking, y'all. Okay. I don't talk like this anymore. I'm going to have to get used to that when I go back to on campus in August. All right. And then the third reason was community and support. So pastor I used to say that people know if they want to join the church that you're at before the pastor gets up and has the sermon. And I think that's so true, because it's the environment and the atmosphere. And so that environment, atmosphere, and the support is really, really vital. And I've always, again, felt supported by True You from like, reaching out from the consultation to the actual consultation to, phone calls and things like that. I know that I can call, email, text Dr. McGowan, my dietitian, Laura. I can text the surgery coordinator, Tisha. Hey, Tisha. I can like text all of these people, call all these people, and I will get a response. And I'll get a response relatively quickly. I usually, give them, I know they're busy, so I give them, they don't have to respond today if it's not urgent, or usually it's within hours that they respond to me. So I think all of that information is really, really vital. And so I decided to do a live to more so celebrate my 100-pound loss. This is kind of another present to myself, like woohoo, celebration time, but also to give you all kind of a sample of that information and that support that I have felt from day one. So that's why I decided to do the live and to ask Dr. McGowan if he would come on, and he graciously agreed. So that's kind of how I found ESG and all of that. I'm going to give about 3 tips to success, so to speak. I don't even want to say keys to success. I want to say things that I've learned to be true. Okay, things that I have learned to be true that maybe I didn't believe before. So I have 3 main keys or things that I have learned that I believe are true within the weight loss journey, and of course within ESG as well. The first one is mental preparation. Just prepare your mind. Y'all, open and honest self-reflection and awareness. And it can get deep sometimes, but open and honest self-reflection and preparedness and awareness. So some of the things I did was I reflected on my past weight loss journeys. Once you get to a point where you reach out for medical help like this isn't your first time at the rodeo. So I went back and looked over past weight loss journeys, thought about what went well in the past and what did not go well in the past, and more so recognized, what worked, what didn't work, but even more importantly, I recognized why certain things did not work, or why certain things did work. And so after kind of assessing things like that, assessing my strengths and all of that, then I thought about the future obstacles that I was going to encounter, certain obstacles that were personal to me that I knew was going to happen because they have happened before. And instead of not expecting them to happen, I, 1, expected it to happen, and 2, I had a plan for how I was going to respond to it. It wasn't really in avoiding it, because some things you cannot avoid, but we can control how we respond to it. So for example, when I get on the scale and the scale goes up, how am I going to respond to that when I know that maybe I've done everything that I should have done? Or when I know that maybe I haven't done everything that I should have done, how am I going to respond and react and move past? So that mental preparation and all being, in the response of what you do to those setbacks and how you address those setbacks is extremely important. That starts from day 1. Hey, Brandy, I see you. That starts from day 1. Actually, that starts from before day 1. So I had about 2 months that I decided to prepare for that. A caveat to that is the finding your own path, doing the research for yourself to determine what will work well for you and your lifestyle and your goals, your particular goals, and not being afraid to modify that. So I had to completely clear my mind of what we refer to as diet culture. Don't eat this and don't eat that and can't eat after this time. We just got rid of all of that because I needed to figure out what was going to work for me, blank slate, with, of course, the guidance from my dietitian and all of that. So those are some things that I had to kind of address. And not only that, but also address how I was going to deal with the stigmas surrounding weight loss procedures, and, judgment and anyone else's opinions. And I just basically decided that my opinion was more valuable. That's basically what I did. Okay. So I decided my opinion was more valuable because I wake up with me every single day. If there's nobody else, I wake up with me. And so I really had to kind of reflect on that and again, find my own path with this. The second thing, and this is nothing new, y'all, nutrition guidance and exercise. Okay. Without these two things, and I'm being so serious, without those two things, I do not think that I would have lost the amount of weight that I lost in the amount of time that I have lost it without having significant plateaus and setbacks. I've only had one real plateau, and that was in May. For the month of May, I kind of went back and forth in fluctuation. But from August till now, weight has gone down, except for, again, that 1 month and a few 1 weekers here and there. And I attribute that to nutrition guidance and exercise. So I have a registered dietitian that listens to me. She believes in science, and she tailors my nutritional goals to me and my specific lifestyle. And so I think that has been extremely successful. Daily tracking, and I do track my food consistently. That and exercise has been a paramount to this journey. And I know tracking can be really, really tedious. You can get, tired of tracking all the time. I understand. But what happened was, after I started tracking for a while, it kind of became a kind of second nature. It became normal to me to track. And so now I can pretty much eyeball the proper portion sizes without having to weigh and measure as much. Now, I still do it because why not if I'm at home and the scale is right there? But I can be confident that when I scoop a spoonful of something on my plate, I can look at that and say, that's about a half a cup or a fourth of a cup. And that's because I started tracking from day one, just when it was just protein and hydration. And that's all I was tracking. I started tracking from day one. As far as exercise, now, I don't think anybody is surprised when I say I don't like exercise. If you are, you haven't been around too long, because I don't like exercise. I just don't like exercise. So what I decided was that was one of my setbacks that I knew I was going to encounter, because I've never liked exercise. So why would it change now? And so what I decided was I made a pact to myself that one, I was going to do it regardless of whether I liked it or not. I was going to do it regardless of whether I liked it or not. I really don't like paying bills. Light bill gets paid every month because it's necessary. So I started thinking more so like that. Like, okay, I don't like it. I really don't like it, but I still need to do it. You have to do something different to get some different results. And so the pact I made with myself was this: I would not skip 2 days of exercise in a row. That's been my pact since August 1st, as a matter of fact. Since about 2 weeks before my ESG, I decided I was not going to skip 2 days of exercise in a row at all. And so that kind of forces me to exercise at least 3 to 4 times a week, because if I miss Monday, I have to do something Tuesday. If I miss Wednesday, I have to do something Thursday. And so that was the never skip 2 days in a row, unless, of course, there was, some extenuating circumstances, some real serious circumstances. And then my second thing was the exercise does not have to be complicated at all. My fallback is walking. If I don't want to do anything else, I will just walk. And I won't even have to walk fast. I will just walk. And I'll tell myself, I'm going to get on this treadmill and I'm going to walk for 15 minutes. And that's all I'm doing. And I'll text a friend. I'll watch a TV show. And typically I end up doing more than what I said I would, because I forget about it. Because now it's more so the thought of doing it instead of actually doing it. That's what it's turned into me now. It's the thought of doing it instead of actually doing it. So I decided exercise would not be complicated, and I would find a simple exercise that I would do from the very beginning that I could build upon, but that was always my fallback. So I started out with just walking. I did not start going hard. I didn't start running until I could walk easily for an hour and not sweat. That's when I started running. And so I gradually increased that as I went, as I got a little bit more fit. Okay. Hi, y'all. I see y'all coming in here. Come on, Brazil. I see y'all. Okay. So the third one and my last one before I bring in Dr. McGowan. So I'm about to bring in Dr. McGowan. Dr. McGowan, you might want to send me that request again, because I think it scrolled up. But before I bring in Dr. McGowan, my third and final key or thing that I have learned is discipline and consistency, y'all. I can't stress that enough. Discipline and consistency. Aim to be disciplined and consistent over motivation. Motivation left a long time ago. I'm going to be completely honest. Y'all, motivation left around like month 3 or 4. I had lost about 30-ish pounds, maybe a little more, and thought I was fine. And that's when I started feeling it. If you go back to some of my earlier posts, I have a short video on that. Motivation left a long time ago. Motivation is a feeling. Sometimes we like stuff, sometimes we don't. That's a feeling. So motivation will wane. It comes and goes. But that discipline will kick in when that motivation ends. So that's kind of what I want to definitely stress. When you see me on a treadmill at 11:45 p.m. at night, know that you're not looking at motivation. You're looking at discipline, because it took me all day to talk myself into doing that. When I pick up that vegetable when I really wanted the French fries, that's discipline telling me you need to eat a vegetable because you have not had a vegetable in like a day or two. So eat a vegetable. You can have the fries later. Eat a vegetable. So I'm telling you that discipline is what you're aiming for. Discipline and consistency. And that's my main goal. I stopped making pound goals around month 3 or 4. I have to look at my old post, but I stopped making pound goals a long time ago. My main goal is to be consistent and disciplined. And so to do that, to show that, and to reveal that to myself, I do the posting of my workouts. I usually have a calendar where I post. I don't think I've done the calendar in about a month or so. I still keep up with it, but I have a calendar that I post to show when I work out. And then I also go back and look at my tracking, because those two things are what has helped me be disciplined and consistent, and helped me be successful with this journey, and not feel like I am on a diet. I don't feel like I'm trying to do this. I feel like I'm just doing it. And I think you have to start that from day one. Okay. So now I'm going to bring in the fierce ESG doctor. That's what I call him. I'm going to get it to him on a hat. The fierce ESG doctor, Dr. McGowan. And he is going to introduce himself, of course, but y'all, this is my doctor. That's all I'm going to say. This is my doctor. This is the man. You hear what I'm saying? And so he's going to introduce himself. He's going to talk a little bit about ESG, and then we're going to get into those questions. All right. And I see it. So request. And okay. I think I've done it. Let's see if he gets on here.
Oh, yeah.
There it
Hey,
is.
Kyra.
Hey, how are you?
Great. Doing well. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
It's a great overview of your story and your tips. I love the top 3 tips. Number 1, I would agree, mental preparation, most important. So I'm really glad you discussed that. I guess a little background on myself, Dr. Christopher McGowan. I think at this point, probably best known as the guy who did the fierce ESG Divas ESG, maybe. But I am a gastroenterologist, internist, and really this is what I do. This is 100% of my practice is endoscopic weight loss, ESG being the primary procedure that I perform and that I help patients with. Also revisions of other types of bariatric procedures. But ESG is something that I started performing about 3.5, 4 years ago. And I've really learned a lot during that time on the technical side, which I'm sure we'll get into with some of the questions, but just from patients like you, Kyra, about what works, what doesn't, what are the keys to success. And so I think for me personally and for our team, we're really at a place where we understand how to make this work the best, how our patients can succeed. So hopefully we can cover a lot of that territory tonight.
Right. So what made you want to do, because all of your procedures are kind of non-invasive procedures, correct? So you don't do
Right.
any VSG or bypass. So what made you want to focus on those non-invasive procedures for weight loss?
So first of all, I'm not a surgeon. So I am, again, a gastroenterologist or endoscopist by training. And this entire field really developed within the past 5 to 10 years, has really taken off within just the past couple. And it really intrigued me right from its inception. And It's number one, fascinating what we're able to do now with non-surgical instruments without cutting, and that's the true advance. But also, so many patients out there like yourself are looking for, or we're looking for options that can help you succeed in getting weight off, but aren't as risky or invasive. And so we know in the field of bariatrics that of anyone who's eligible, of everyone who's eligible to actually have bariatric surgery, only 1% actually pursue it. And we know that's because of fear of risks and recovery and those concerns. So this is a really exciting field, and it's still in its infancy. And even the ESG procedure, we're continuing to improve, and I'm seeing those improvements year after year. So it's a really great time right now for patients who are looking for other options to help them lose weight.
Nice. So is there anything new happening in ESG that you want to let us know about, or just a general overview of exactly what ESG is for those that may have just found us and have no clue?
Yeah, the simplest description of the endoscopic sleeve is creation of a sleeve, so a narrow, more tubular type stomach, endoscopically, so using a flexible scope. So we're doing the entire procedure through the mouth. We go down into the stomach with a scope that has a suturing device, which is known as overstitch, and that allows us to place stitches to tighten the stomach from the inside. So it's mimicking a surgical sleeve, the vertical sleeve, in a lot of ways. It's actually quite a bit different, but just in its basic form, it's a smaller stomach made smaller from the inside rather than from the outside of cutting. That's the real advance. That's why most of our patients have a fairly rapid recovery on the order of a few days rather than a few weeks, and that's a big difference. Risk is substantially lower as well. So that's what ESG is. As far as things that are coming or developments, probably the most exciting thing in the field right now is that the multi-center randomized controlled study of ESG compared to placebo or lifestyle change alone is about to be released in the end of October. Those results will be released. The preliminary, it's already been announced that that study met its primary endpoints in terms of efficacy and safety. This is a big deal because this is really the gold standard type of study, randomizing patients to receive the procedure or not, and then see how they do over time. So we're really excited to see those results released, and that will really, in a sense, prove how effective this procedure actually is.
And so if it's kind of proven that it is effective, then that would kind of go toward it possibly being covered by insurance, because I know sometimes finances may be a hindrance to people who would be perfect candidates for it.
Yeah, exactly. So we know it works. So there's no question this procedure works. Every study is consistent in the amount of weight that patients lose on average. The difference here is a randomized study is just a higher level of quality research. And so what we anticipate is that will lead to an actual procedural code for ESG. Right now, when we perform the procedure, we assign it this unassigned GI code. And that's why it's not, why you can't get reimbursement through insurance. So the first step would be, based on those results, receiving it's called a CPT code. And then after that, it can go to insurers and Medicare and to look at actual reimbursement. So those steps are still a couple of years away, but this is the first step in getting there.
Well, that's exciting, though, that at some point, hopefully it will be covered. So it will have maybe a wider reach for people who don't have to, who can go through their insurance. So that is awesome. Now, for me, I am glad that I spent the money on it. I'm going to say this was money well spent. I really am, especially once I add up money that I've spent before with previous weight loss journeys and all the different shakes and supplements and, and stuff that I've done before. It probably adds up, it equals out. So I definitely believe it is money well spent, because it's your health, right? It's your health.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to adjust a little bit. Somebody told me my camera was too low, so I'm trying to adjust a little bit. Okay, so let's get into the questions. I'm ready for questions. So y'all, we got about 50 questions, 50 to 60 questions that was on the form. If you have a question, I haven't seen any pop up yet. If you have a question, there's a little question icon on the bottom right corner, if I'm not mistaken, where you can put that in. And I'm going to kind of read the questions off and answer those as we go. Y'all ready?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. And I'm gonna start with the ones that came in earliest. And if I don't get to your question, I may try to put two together if we've already answered it. But also, don't forget to go to the True You website. The FAQs on there really are FAQs. A lot of the times people ask questions about the sutures and this, that, and the other, and y'all have a pretty extensive FAQ list with information on there. So if you go to the True You Weight Loss, go to the ESG page under services, I believe, and then it will have FAQs down at the bottom. Yes, do that. Okay, let's go. The first question is for me. So the first question says, how do I get motivated to exercise when I don't like to exercise? So I think I kind of answered that a little bit in the very beginning. But remember, I told you I strive for discipline and consistency, not motivation, because I'm not going to feel like working out. So I remember I made that pact with myself. I do 2 days. I never skip 2 days in a row. And then I have a fall, a kind of a backup workout, which is always walking. So if I just really don't want to do anything else and it's day 2 and I know I need to get up, I will walk. And sometimes that's walking on a treadmill, and sometimes that's marching in my room in front of the TV. I count that as walking as well. I did that a lot in the early days, was just sitting there marching, trying to get my body moving. So that's one of the ways that I keep myself motivated. All right, Dr. McGowan, this one's for you. This is one of your patients that had ESG about a week ago. Congratulations. And they're talking about false hunger. They want to know, how long does it take for the false hunger feelings to go away? Is there anything they can do to speed that up? And then they want to kind of know if ESG eliminated or removed some of those hunger hormones from the stomach.
Okay. Yeah. Great question. So when you say false hunger, I think this is referring to the fact that I tell a lot of my patients the first week or two, if you feel hunger pains, it's generally not true hunger. It is actually just the healing process. So my best way of describing this is when we suture the stomach from the inside, the lining of the stomach gets kind of roughed up, and almost these little ulcers can form as it's healing. And ulcers create this hunger type feeling. So it's hunger pains for some people. So early on, the ways to reduce that are, number one, the Prilosec that we prescribe our patients, which we're now prescribing twice a day. I think, Kyra, when you had the procedure, it was once a day. What I've found, and this is just anecdotal from my own experience, but twice a day seems to help heal the stomach faster, which we'd expect, but that reduces some of those early hunger type pains. The other thing is that they're usually easily treated with just a sip of water, a sip of protein if you're on your full liquid stage, and they're not long lasting, usually a week or two. Once you transition the diet forward, you're meeting your protein goals and definitely getting towards soft foods or regular foods, it generally goes away. That's that early type feelings. I guess a bigger question is, what about hunger in general? I think that's a more complicated question. So hunger there's a lot of factors that play into hunger, from the stomach itself to our brains, of course, medications, external factors, all of that. If we're speaking just about the hunger hormone ghrelin, which a lot of patients ask me about, we don't know entirely, to be honest. There's only a few studies that have looked at this. One of the early ones in 2017 from the Mayo Clinic showed that ghrelin levels did go down after ESG, which is more or less what we see in practice. Most patients are not very hungry for a period of months, let's say. And just to back up for a second, ghrelin, just for those who aren't familiar with it, is the hormone in our bodies that makes us feel hunger. It's actually produced by the stomach. And if you fast for a period of time, it increases, you feel hunger. This is a survival mechanism, so you don't forget to eat. And if you lose weight, that hormone also increases. So anyone who loses weight through any other mechanism, if someone loses 100 pounds through sheer willpower, which is not easy to do, you're going to see ghrelin start increasing almost immediately as you're losing weight. So what we see with this procedure, at least from that early study, is that ghrelin actually decreased. So that's the opposite of what normally happens. There have since been a couple other small studies that say maybe it doesn't decrease, but it's sort of a blunted response where you're not seeing the skyrocketing ghrelin, it's just a little more flatlined. And the most recent study, which was presented just last month at one of our major meetings, showed that the ghrelin peaked around 6 months and then went down and was lower than those who did not have the procedure. So that's a lot of information, but ultimately we don't know definitively, but in some way ghrelin is affected, whether it's actually decreases or is blunted in how it responds. That's really important. That's how you're just not starving after you have the procedure. It is different than a vertical sleeve gastrectomy. And we know if you cut away and remove stomach tissue where this hormone is produced, the ghrelin is definitely lower and for a longer period of time. So what we find is our patients will be less hungry for usually at least 3 to 6 months, and then can start to see appetite slowly creep up. You're still satisfied with less food though, so we're able to counteract that with the smaller portions.
And see, that leads into the next one about satisfaction. So the question was for me, how do I know when I've eaten enough to satisfy my body and stomach without overeating? So I referenced that I started weighing and tracking food. My dietitian gave me a sheet that had portion sizes on there for each type of food, and it would tell how much of that portion equaled, so much and all that. And so I started weighing and tracking and measuring the food, and then I would eat that food and then stop and see if I felt hungry or if I just wanted to eat. And so a lot of the times I wasn't hungry anymore, but I just kind of maybe wanted to eat. So I would stop eating then, and that would be my cue for satisfaction. So that was more of a mental thing with that. But on the occasion that I have eaten too much, I would get a pressure. I didn't get pain. I didn't get I didn't feel like I was sick for the most part. I never ate that much, but I would start to feel just a little pressure top left side. Under the rib, just a little bit of pressure. And the minute I felt that pressure, I would just stop eating because I figured that was me being full. That was around to about month 6, 7-ish, something like that. Now, I don't necessarily feel that pressure as much now that I'm 11 months out. But what I notice is now I get the I'm full burp. If I stop eating about 5 minutes later, then I'll burp. And I'm like, oh, I was full. So now it's more so me stopping before I get to the point of being completely stuffed and full. I always say if I can feel in my stomach, I've probably eaten too much. And that's kind of how I approach that. But I started eating the satisfaction ahead of time before and not to fullness.
Yeah, that's good advice. Everyone feels fullness differently too. For some people, after this procedure, it can be a very rapid feeling of fullness or discomfort. For the next person, it might be more subtle. So you really have to get used to your own cues and start to learn those along the way so that you're not reaching that point every time. This is definitely not a procedure. Frankly, no procedure could physically stop you from overeating. It's just not really possible. But you really want to listen to those early cues so you're not having discomfort or indigestion, after you overeat or just eating too much.
All right, and I'm going to add in a question. I wonder if there it is up there from the audience. I'm going to try to take those as well. So this one says, why is it that some days I can eat more than others and some days I have more restriction than others?
So there's a lot of factors, again, that can affect that. Your stomach hasn't changed. So it's really relating to other factors. Maybe it's things you ate earlier that day were less satisfying or stayed in your stomach less long. And so by the evening, you can eat a little bit more. There's other things going on in your life. You're more tired, and so you're hungrier and can eat more. There's so many things that play into it, but the stomach itself really hasn't changed. We really want to take advantage with this procedure of slow or delayed stomach emptying. It's perhaps the primary mechanism that of how this procedure works, more than just smaller capacity. What we know is the stomach empties a lot slower after this procedure. In fact, 80% slower. And it takes 1.5 years to get back to where it was. So we really want to eat foods that make us feel more satisfied and stay in longer. So it might be that you eat something really fibrous, or definitely protein first, as we always encourage, and maybe a lot of fibrous vegetables, and then that just hangs around a lot longer. And so you're feeling this restriction, which is just you're just more full, and it's hanging around. And then the next time you eat, maybe it's something that can move through a little more quickly. That's probably the difference.
All right, so our next question on the form, how many years is for you, Dr. McGowan? How many years is your longest standing successful patient?
I have many patients that are 3.5 years out from this procedure, and that we're still in touch with and doing well. So we have a very large group of patients at this point that we're still following. But I started in 2018 doing this procedure. So we're approaching around 1,000 procedures now in our program.
Oh wow, yeah, and that's what we're gonna have to celebrate, that 1,000 procedures, y'all. I was his 326, so it's up and coming.
You're
I
the
was,
first patient who asked for your what number am I, which
I'm gonna
was
get it tattooed
amusing
somewhere.
to me. But we have others ask that. Our patients are not numbers, but it is good to know how many procedures your provider has done if you're looking into this.
Yes, definitely, definitely. Okay, so this one is for you as well. They said they've seen multiple procedures on ESG. They want to know what happens to the bleeding that happens when the intestinal mucosa is been sutured, suctioned, or does the body pass it out? So I guess the bleeding that happens, the internal
Yeah,
bleeding, what happens to it? I guess
it's a fun question.
it is a
Yeah.
fun question.
Um, so there is actually it appears to be a lot of bleeding during the procedure. That's because everything's magnified. We're up close in the stomach. The bleeding stops once we tighten each suture. So if we're experiencing bleeding, once we're finished tightening each suture, it stops. And then we just kind of rinse it and suction it out. We do not want to leave blood in the stomach at the end of the procedure because that makes you really nauseous. So at the conclusion of each procedure, we rinse the whole stomach out. We make sure everything is nice and clean, there's no bleeding, and then we know that patient's safe to go home.
So this question is for both of us. It wants to know how much restriction for meal size would you feel after healing, about 3 months after healing, then about 3 months later, 6 months, etc. So I guess, does the restriction change maybe? I think this one has to do with the feeling of restriction though.
Right. It's more adaptation to the stomach. It's natural that over time you'll feel you can eat more. That's just because your body's adapting to what we did to it. The stomach in the beginning is really rigid and it's healing, and your capacity is absolutely its smallest in the first few weeks to months. As you described, though, Kyra, over time you feel that you're able to eat more. There's less of that initial feedback when you reach capacity, and that's completely normal. It's not a sign that anything's come loose or failed. It's really not that. It's that our bodies do adapt to what we do to them. It's the same if you have a surgical procedure. So then it's really important to build those habits over time, like you've shown, and just lock into those habits and just keep doing what you're doing.
Right, because right now I really do feel like sometimes it's just more of me just stopping than me feeling like I'm full, but I'm putting that amount of food on my plate, or I'll just say, you know what, yeah, that's enough. I'm done. And I am full. So I want to say probably at about 6 months or so was when I knew exactly how much I could probably eat. Before that, I was kind of playing with the restriction a little bit, trying to figure out, but I never ate a whole lot to test it out. I'm scary, y'all. I don't like being sick. I don't want to even try to be sick. So I didn't really test or push. I'm a rule follower, and that's what I did. All right, let's see what questions we have in here. I see some in the comments. Okay. Why do some doctors have a 45-day liquid diet and some just a couple of weeks?
There's you'll see different programs, different protocols out there. Most programs follow a similar 2 week or so liquid period, followed by then purees, maybe for a week, and then soft foods and regular foods. That's more or less the standard, though there's some variety out there. 45 days is a lengthy liquid diet. In my experience, that's a bit hard to do. Because by the time you get even 2 weeks in, your stomach's more open, the swelling inside has gone down, you can handle more. And so it will be harder to maintain that. So I can't speak to why that program does that. But I would say there's no evidence to say doing 2 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever is any better necessarily. It's really about just allowing your stomach to heal and allowing you to adjust to the diet progression without rushing it and getting uncomfortable or causing any problems.
Mm-hmm. Because if that does happen, then you may have to go back to liquids. I know I've had a couple of people that tell me that they were on 2 weeks of liquid. They started having issues when they hit purees a little bit. Maybe they needed a little extra week of liquid for healing, and then they did that and moved on. So
Yeah, it's not a rigid schedule. Even in our program, we try to be flexible. So someone might say a week and a half, I think I'm ready to move on to purees and we'll make sure everything's okay. And we would allow that. Where the next person might say, I'm 2.5, 3 weeks into this liquid phase and I think I need a little more time. I'm just not quite ready. And that's totally fine. So it's not going to be exactly the same timeline for everybody.
After 2 weeks, I was ready to chew. I wanted to chew something. It was enough.
Most people are.
All right. So can a ESG patient have VSG?
Certainly, yeah. So I suppose one of the advantages of this procedure is that it's not the end of the line. So if someone really didn't respond well to this for whatever reason, they could go on to have a vertical sleeve. I would caution someone who has not succeeded with this procedure, assuming it was performed properly and everything went appropriately, I would caution them not to really go on to a VSG. It's so similar. It's really just another restrictive procedure. So in that scenario, something like a gastric bypass would be more appropriate because maybe that individual needs more of a malabsorption component as well.
Gotcha. That makes sense. That does make sense. Just going to remind the people, if you're putting questions in here, click the little question box and put it in there. I'm trying to catch them as they come up in the comments, but the comments are rolling, so I'm trying to do that as well. But it's easier if you put it in the question box, and then I'll add it in there. So our last question I'm going to take, well, not last, but the next one I'll take from this one, from our form is, this person is 6 weeks out. They have gas, bubbles, and burping after every meal for about an hour. Is that normal? Are they eating too fast? Does it go away?
So I think you actually described this right now. Even a little burp is or hiccup is kind of your sign that you're full. That's what that sounds like to me. That sounds like that individual has reached capacity, and then remember that the stomach is really slow emptying, so it's just sitting in there, as opposed to before the procedure where things would start moving through right away. So that should improve over time, but it's also sounds to me like the portions maybe need to be reduced, or just the pace at which that individual is eating should be slowed down a little bit.
All right. This question, what does the stomach look like at 12 months out?
Great question. Yeah, so it's really interesting to see what the stomach looks like. When this is done properly, the stomach is all healed together inside. So you really shouldn't see loose sutures. It looks like a smaller stomach. You get these kind of bands of fibrosis coming together, bridges we call them, where everything is held together. So it actually looks pretty similar to how the stomach looks when we finish the procedure. There's a little bit more space, but in general, that entire wall is held together in place still. So that's really what it should look like a year out. I've seen that numerous times now in my own program. Occasionally we could see some sign of a loose suture, or we could see a little bit of suture, but it's still holding, and that's kind of irrelevant. So that tells me that this is something that will then last quite a bit longer because it's all healed in.
And I want to say on y'all's Instagram page, there's a video of a suture of a patient from like a year ago or maybe 2 years ago where y'all went in and we can see the stomach on there. I think that's on Instagram, I believe. Okay,
Right.
I saw 2 questions in the comments I'm going to try to get to. One is about ESG and combo drugs. I guess if by chance someone may need a little extra help from the ESG, they want to know what types of combo drugs or combinations that can be prescribed, I guess. And then another question is about someone with a BMI of 31, if this will benefit them.
Sure. So combination therapy is something that actually really excites me because this procedure by itself, we know how effective it can be, but for some individuals, adding on a medication can really boost the effectiveness. So we use, I'm generally quite proactive about using medications if we feel it's needed. Maybe someone has the procedure and just feels a little hungrier than they should. We can use a medication to curb appetite. Some of the newer medications that, like Wegovy and Saxenda, that work through gut hormone called GLP-1 also help to slow stomach emptying a little further. So we think they could be a nice adjunct to this procedure. That's still really early, but there's some studies to suggest it can really boost the weight loss results. Most people don't need the combination therapy. By far, most people don't, but it is something that we know can be beneficial. As far as the lower BMI of 31. Certainly, this is a procedure for someone with a BMI in that range. In our program, we treat patients 30 and above BMI. I have performed it in individuals with lower BMIs than that. I would say that in general, a BMI of below 30 is not going to respond as well to this type of procedure because we can only make the stomach so small, we can only restrict calories so much, and so that calorie deficit that we can achieve is less. But 31 is right within the range of what we treat. I've treated patients anywhere from the 30 range up to mid 60s for someone who maybe doesn't have insurance coverage for actual surgery. Or doesn't want it, which is like most patients that I see.
Right, right. Okay, so this person wants to know, they are using Saxenda, I don't know if that's right, injections, and they want to know when they should stop before the procedure.
Oh, so someone who's on medication leading up to the procedure?
Yes.
Yeah. So the short answer is there isn't an exact science to that. In general, you don't need that kind of medication right after the procedure. You don't have much appetite at all. So we could, one option is just to stop it. You don't really have to taper off of it. You could just stop it, have the procedure, and maybe resume it more than a month later if needed. You could actually stay on it throughout the process. We would just have to be really certain you're meeting your calorie goals in the early recovery period because it would pretty much eliminate appetite.
Okay, our next question is about digestive changes expected after ESG, but I think we kind of answered that a little bit with the slower gastric emptying. Is there any other digestive changes we should be aware of?
Not really. I would just point out that there aren't the changes you see with a gastric bypass or duodenal switch where absorption is altered. And that's an important distinction. So you're not going to become deficient in nutrients or vitamins. We recommend considering a vitamin the first month or two. It's not even mandatory because it just won't happen because absorption itself is not altered. So that's important to know.
All right. Our next question should be popping up. So in the future, when I am old, is this procedure going to be safe?
Yeah, there's no long-term risks that have ever been shown with this procedure. Ultimately, once your stomach heals, it's functioning normally. There's really nothing that you would need to be worried about long-term. A lot of patients ask about the sutures themselves. They're still in your body, or the little metal anchors that we use on the ends, and they just stay there. Just like if you had any other internal surgery, there's always clips and sutures and staples and things that are left there, and they're not harmful in any way.
And good way to answer that next question about the metal brackets. That was our next one coming up. And then I did have someone want to know if those would have any issues with like x-rays when you have an x-ray, the metal bracket, any?
No, an MRI is probably a bigger question, which they are safe. They're compatible with MRI. So they're very tiny. They're just a few millimeters each, and they are visible on x-ray. So if you ever have an x-ray after this procedure, they will be seen just under the left lung. They look like little clips. Radiologists often describe them as clips. They're not, though. They're just the little anchors that hold one end of the suture in place.
All right, so our next question has to do with stomach stretching and wanting to know how can you tell if the stomach has stretched since the procedure, or how does it exactly get stretched at all, if it does?
Yeah, I think this relates to that feeling of being able to eat more over time, which does not necessarily mean things have stretched. It's just something I always emphasize over and over again. So I basically tell my patients not to worry about this. I mean, eventually, years down the line, of course, things could stretch. The stomach is always able to stretch over time, but it's not something you need to worry about. You're not going to instantaneously stretch things out if you eat too much in a meal. So generally just trust that things are, if you're going to a program that has experience in this, you can kind of just relax about that.
Do you take patients from the UK?
We have, certainly. Was that a question?
Yeah, it was definitely a question. Yeah, that was one of the questions. Somebody wants to know, what are the signs of their sutures popping? So in case they have a suture that popped or loosened, they want to know what should they be on the lookout for.
Yeah, sutures won't just pop. You know, there's not, again, it's the same kind of thing. Don't worry about that. You wouldn't feel anything. If a suture came loose, you wouldn't feel it. There wouldn't be any sense of anything happening, actually, and it's not dangerous in any way. So yeah, again, I wouldn't worry about that. It's not the thing to focus on in general. You know, it's just trust the process really.
Get the mindset right. Successful, successful. Stop thinking about the negative. Successful. It's a
Yes.
lot of it. Let's see. Okay, that question we already answered. I'm gonna exit that one because that was the one that was in the comments as well. Okay, I think we talked about that too. This is the one about the medications. Do you recommend any weight loss medications? So yes, that can be a caveat to your success. Let's see what's on my list here. Carbonated beverages. Can you drink them?
Can you drink them?
I mean, can they drink them? I don't know. Dr. McGowan, I told you I'm a rule follower. So I have not had a soda
You haven't
in
tried? Okay.
no.
What about sparkling water? A little Pellegrino? No.
Now don't ask me about
So
wine, but
no, no. Yeah, so wine, well, alcohol definitely not, we say not for a year, or maybe more. While you're trying to lose weight, you really shouldn't drink alcohol. As far as carbonated drinks, it's not something you want to drink in the beginning, because you'll just be really uncomfortable. It won't cause damage, but you'll just be gassy, bloated, feel like you have indigestion. Over time, most patients are able to drink carbonated things eventually. It could be in a few months or longer. We wouldn't recommend soda, but like a sparkling water should generally be okay after a while.
I actually have not tried. We do the little packets of flavored water. So we just get our water and put, a sugar-free Country Time lemonade packet in it and shake it up, and we'll drink that. And we don't really drink soda in my house, so I have not had a soda in over 11 months. I just haven't tried. I might try. We'll see. Just for you all. Just for you all. Okay. Let's see. I think I already talked about my exercise routine, 4 to 5 days a week, plus strength training. Somebody asked me if I just do cardio. No, I'm lifting weights and body weight strength training as well. I do that 2 to 3 times a week, coupled with the 4 to 5 days a week of cardio. So I do both. Let's see. Oh, is it necessary to look at the sutures if a person isn't losing weight, and they're able to eat at a pre-ESG level or even gaining weight within the first 6 months or so? So do you recommend going back and seeing what's going on if that person can eat unrestricted and is gaining weight?
So if that in that scenario, first thing we're going to do is just look at the whole picture and see, maybe why things aren't on track, what factors could be playing into that. As far as actual capacity, if someone describes that they can eat absolutely anything, I'm always going to want to evaluate it. So it's I have a low threshold to evaluate the stomach. I've not really found anyone wear a sleeve. It wasn't nicely intact, but we always check it. And the way we do that in our program is starting with just a barium test and what's called an upper GI series. So you just drink some contrast under X-ray, and we can see the shape, the size of the stomach. They introduce some air that kind of stretches the stomach out. And then we know if it's good or not. So I wouldn't bring someone in straight for an endoscopy. I would always do that initial screening test. And then 10 out of 10 times, essentially, it looks fine. And then we have to figure out, well, what is going on? So maybe someone's just not feeling those fullness cues as well. That might be a scenario where a medication can help amplify those feelings. So then you're really getting the most out of that smaller stomach.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. That makes sense. One of the questions in the comment, a fun question, they want to know what your favorite cheat meal is.
My personal one? I don't know. That's a good question. In our program, we say there's no never foods. Laura, if she's in here, always says that, and I would agree with that. I mean, if you want to eat something, you should eat it. We want to be, we don't want to restrict things to that degree. So if you're craving something, have it. Just don't eat a lot of it if it's, but yeah, I think there's no foods off limits.
Right. I was thinking that as well. I don't have cheat meals because I can eat what I want to eat. I just choose to eat differently sometimes. So that's what I was thinking on that one.
Mm-hmm.
What about ESG versus the gastric balloon?
Very different. So gastric balloons fall within this world of endoscopic weight loss. They are 6-month procedures in general, so shorter term. They work by basically blocking food from exiting the stomach. So it's almost a more drastic delay in stomach emptying. They're a little more hit or miss as far as how patients can do. We've seen patients do really, really well and some not. It's less consistent overall than ESG. If I were just to compare the two, the weight loss with ESG is higher on average. Someone who does well with the balloon is really motivated and does not want their stomach altered. I think that's a key distinction.
So what about binge eating disorders, and would there be any benefit of ESG or any recommendations you can make for somebody who may have binge eating disorder and want to have ESG?
That's something we always want to screen for any patient undergoing a weight loss procedure. Making the stomach smaller certainly not going to help that directly. So that's where we would want that patient to be involved in some counseling and to have that support along the way, because it's going to take more than just the procedure generally to control that.
Right. My camera keeps doing weird things, y'all. It keeps moving on me. So I'm trying to not cut off my head. Okay, so this is a good one. This is about the pose procedure. And they want to know if there's a, it says, how does the way you perform this procedure, ESG, compare to the pose procedure? What is the pose procedure?
Yeah, this is someone really on the cutting edge. I like this question. Pose it's POSE. And that is that's a newer it's a different platform for performing an ESG type procedure. It's so I mentioned overstitch is really the only endoscopic suturing system available that we utilize to perform ESG. POSE is it stands for Primary Obesity Surgery Endoluminal. It's made by a different company. Instead of sutures, these are more of anchors that hold tissue together. So that's actually not available outside of a current research study. It's in its early stages. The device itself was tested years ago in a randomized study and failed. But it was the thinking was it was that where the plications were placed, they were only placed at the top of the stomach. So now what's being done is another study mimicking the ESG technique, but with this different platform. So that's known as POSE or POSE 2.0. It's like a second go around with this device. So that's currently under evaluation and they are seeking FDA approval for that procedure. It's not available, again, outside of these couple of research institutions.
Okay. So let's see what our next question is. Oh, next question is about food. I'm going to get the commenters to help me with that because I have a lot of ESGers in the commenters. They want to know what we're eating on a daily basis when we transitioned into normal food. What are we eating? So for me, it's usually about, my plate looks like about 3 ounces of a protein, about a fourth a cup of a carbohydrate, and about a third a cup of vegetables. That's kind of what my normal plate looks like. That's my normal go-to routine. So it'll be, maybe a little bit of steak, maybe some broccoli, and maybe some mashed potatoes. And that's kind of what I look like. Y'all drop in the comments what y'all are eating, those that are on normal food, to give the people a little help on this one. What does your plate look like usually when you fix it? What about intermittent fasting, Dr. McGowan? Is that a good idea for those with ESG? Do you think it is? 16-8 type of situation?
Yeah, that's certainly popular right now. It's not what we would really recommend after this procedure. So think about your stomach is much smaller. If you really have these large gaps in your eating, you'll be hungrier, but you won't have the capacity. It's not exactly in line with what we're trying to do. We try to be flexible with our patients, and if they really want to follow a certain path, we'll generally try to work with them. But generally speaking, we want someone to follow more evenly spaced meals throughout the day. In fact, more frequent, smaller meals is probably the best way to really succeed with this procedure. But it's not to say you can't do it. I definitely would not do that early on, though. It really wouldn't be compatible early on. So long term, we're looking at smaller meals throughout the day, nice balance in macros. So nothing gimmicky. We're not keto or intermittent fasting, none of these things. It's really just about balance, healthy eating, well-rounded eating. Maybe when we look at macro composition, 30% protein, 40% carbohydrates, and 30% fat at each meal and each snack, something like that.
So this question is popping up. It's, what is the percentage of stomach that is shrunk compared to VSG? So I guess how much smaller or what are
How
their,
much smaller do we make it? Yeah.
yeah, versus ES?
Um, with the VSG, the stomach's somewhere around 80% smaller. There's some variation in who performs it. With ESG, it's probably 70 to 80% smaller. When we finish the procedure, it's 90% smaller at least. So, we make the stomach really as tight as we can. We want to make sure we can get our scope through at the end. Then we know you'll be able to drink liquids and recover. But naturally, as swelling internally goes down, it opens up a little bit. So that's why it doesn't stay 90% smaller. But again, it's not just about the size reduction. It's something that I always emphasize. It's more about the function of the stomach and how it behaves differently. So it's not a rigid structure. Your stomach can stretch. So whether it's a VSG or ESG, your stomach always has the ability to stretch to accommodate food, but around 70% smaller.
But overall, I guess we do have a little bit more stomach capacity than a VSG
Yes,
patient.
I would say so.
Right. Okay. Let's see. So that wait, is there another one up here? Yeah. Trying to get to some of these. How much weight do patients lose in the first 30 days?
It's a good question. It's variable. We look in our program, we look at generally the 2 month mark. We generally see our patients lose about 10% of their body weight within 2 months. It's a little faster than the average you see in studies out there, which might be 10% by 3 months. We just find that our patients lose around 10%. So it doesn't have, you don't have to lose that much, but we kind of expect you to if you're following the protocol. So just a ballpark, if you started around 200 pounds, you might lose 20 pounds in the first 2 months or so. So it's really important when you're you shouldn't compare yourself to others, but if you are, if you're looking at what people are saying, pounds should not be compared to pounds. It's really about percentages. So when we meet with our patients at each visit, we're calculating how much they've lost percentage-wise, because one person's 20 pounds might be the next person's 40 pounds in terms of their percentage of body weight. So that's really important to keep in mind. It can be discouraging if you see someone say, hey, I lost 45 pounds in 2 months. Well, wait, I only lost 15 pounds. Well, maybe that's actually correct. Percentage-wise, it could be the same. So just keep that in mind.
Right. Yes.
But
I remember that.
Yeah, everyone's on a different path. So it could take someone 6 months to lose their weight, a year, 2 years. Everyone follows a different timeline.
Comparison is the thief of joy. Stop doing it. It will mess you up. It's good. I only compare myself to myself prior. So I'll say, okay, would I have lost 5 or 8 pounds if I tried this the month before without ESG? No. Okay, so that's kind of where I try to, the only comparison that I do is with my prior weight loss journeys, not necessarily with anyone else.
That's good advice. Where the comparison is really helpful for us when we're working with patients is someone who says, I think I should have lost a lot more. And then we'll look at the numbers and say, actually, you've lost 10% of your body weight in a month. You're way ahead of schedule. And so it's important then to compare yourself to the averages that we see, and just to get a sense of, almost just to reassure, because in general, we all want to lose weight faster, right? Faster is better, but your body can only release the weight at the pace it wants to. You can't really accelerate it anymore.
Right. That's true. That's very true. This person wants to know about sodium in acidic, I guess, sports drinks. They want to know if they can still have like maybe fresh lemons with salt, or do they need to avoid that after ESG?
Oh, acidic foods should be fine in general. They probably won't bother you. In fact, flavoring your water with lemon or something like that is actually a great idea to help you get your water in during the day. As far as what was the first part of that question? Sorry.
It was about they were just saying they are unsure about the sports drinks. I guess they're
sports drinks. Oh, sodium. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
sodium. So that's early on, we encourage sports drinks, the things that will keep you hydrated the first week, let's say. When it's difficult to get liquids down, it's not a bad idea to use sports drinks, even Pedialyte, which is extremely hydrating, or salty or broth is a good thing early on. Once you've recovered and you're drinking freely, stick to water, because if you're relying on sports drinks, there is a lot of sodium and you'll end up retaining fluid. And that's not really what you want.
Let's see our next question on here. Have you identified a point where your patients stop losing time-wise? Like, I guess maybe maybe a plateau that patients seem to hit around a certain time?
So everyone's different. I would say almost invariably there's a plateau at some point within the first month or so. That is a scale plateau. It's not a real plateau. Everybody goes through that. Everybody is equally frustrated by it. I warn every patient 100 times, and it's always still upsetting. And I understand that because the scale is moving fast in the beginning. It's exciting, and then it stops. The answer is to stop weighing yourself. I've said this many times to many people. Just
Yeah.
stop weighing yourself and wait, because the weight will continue to come off. It just relates to fluid shifts. All that weight you lost in the first week is just water weight. You replenish that, but the scale doesn't go up. It just stays the same because you're simultaneously losing real weight. So everybody goes through that, and you just kind of power ahead. Just stay focused. There's nothing you can do to alter that. It's a natural part of the process. Beyond that, Kyra, you said you almost had no stalls except 1 month, which is really unusual. Almost everybody will have a stall here or there where things will slow down. It can happen anytime. Often when someone starts weight training and really pushing the activity, which I do believe is when you were starting to hit the Peloton and things,
It
right?
was.
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
So why did the scale stall? Because you put muscle on. And so if you're just tracking your weight, it can be confusing because it's not moving. I'm working out hard, nothing's happening. Well, actually, your body composition's changing. So that's another reason the scale can actually stall for a little while. The answer, again, is just keep doing what you're doing. So what you are such a great example of is just consistency over time. And then the plateaus we can try to ignore, because if you're doing all the things right, the weight will come off. So there's no expiration to this procedure. So if it takes 6 months, a year, or 2 years, it really doesn't matter as long as we're making that progress over time.
But for a person that may have a true plateau of several months, what would you recommend that they need to do?
Yeah, several months would be a true plateau, I would say. So at that point, we would look at overall all of these pieces. So we'd look at exercise level, we would look at nutrition, make sure these things are optimized. And then that might be a scenario where we add on a medication to help push things along, because some people might hit a sticking point where their body is just really resistant. Now, it's also important to point out that it's hard to lose 100% of your excess weight. So that weight above quote, normal BMI, it's very hard to lose all of that no matter what you do. You've managed to do that, but you're definitely an exception to the rule. So for most people, as you're approaching a healthy weight, it's going to get harder and harder and harder. And that's completely normal. But we do have other tools like medications to help if needed.
And I will say that Laura, that's my dietitian, y'all. I asked her at one of our last meetings, which was about 4 or 5 months ago. I asked her what I needed to do when I hit a plateau, and she told me to play the calorie game. And so she given me the formula, and she said, okay, when you hit a plateau, go up in calories, maybe about 250 to 300. Stay there for a couple of weeks, see what happens. If nothing happens, then go back down. And then she gave me a number not to go below, which I believe was 1200. She told me not to go below 1200. And I played that calorie game, and I actually have played the calorie game before I hit a plateau or so, in the hopes of not hitting one. Now, I did hit that one in May, but as you made me realize, that was when I got my Peloton too. So I started doing a different type of exercising and training. But that's what she told me to do. So that's what I've been doing. So if you go back to my highlights, you'll see that I'll say I increased my calories on this month because of this. That's the reason that I'm increasing. And I actually just increased a little bit in July as well to continue to get to the next 5 or so pounds. And then I think I'm good after that. I'm good after that. But I wanted to just kind of keep going. So that was the advice that she gave me. I made sure to ask about plateaus after 6 months out. What about dumping syndrome? Do we get that? Is that
You do not. No.
yeah.
Again, because there's no alteration of absorption. So there is no dumping syndrome.
I have not experienced that, but I just wanted to double check. That was one of our questions on there about dumping syndrome. Let's see. I think answered the majority of these. This one is about diet progression, but we kind of answered that is varies among doctors as well, for how they want it to progress. Mine was about an 8-week progression is what I had. So about 2 weeks of full liquids, 2 weeks of puree soft foods, and then about 4 weeks of soft foods before I could eat anything unrestricted, so to speak.
Roughly about 8 weeks to get there. That's right.
Mm-hmm. Let's see what question we have up here. This one is about sutures. Are they the same sutures that they use with VSG?
No, VSG is staples, actually. So there's a staple line running up the side of the stomach where the stomach is cut away and stapled off. So sometimes the surgeon will oversew with sutures on top of that, but generally just staples.
Okay. This question is about once you reach your ideal weight, how do you maintain that ideal weight? That's a good dietitian question. Y'all, my dietitian is in here. I saw Laura comment. Hey, Laura, she's in here. That's a good dietitian question, too.
That is, yeah. It's in addition to diet, though, exercise is actually proven to be probably the best way to maintain weight, or one of the main ways to maintain. It really does help with weight maintenance. So you may not be able to, you're not going to stop exercising, Kyra.
I'm not going to be able to, and Brandy isn't going to let me either. She's in here. She's not going to let me stop.
That's right.
So here's the next question. Can you stretch out your stomach with liquids? Man, this one is on your FAQs because we asked this one a lot. Can you stretch out your stomach with liquids either during full liquids or nope?
No, you can't. If you overdo it with liquid, I mean, I don't think you can. It would be really, no, you can't. If you overdo it with liquids, you'll probably just vomit or be really uncomfortable. But no, you can't generate enough force just with liquids in your stomach.
No, so go ahead and drink, y'all. Drink. You can't stretch it out.
Right.
Insulin resistance. Can insulin resistance play a role to a plateau?
Well, it's all intertwined. Insulin resistance is a direct result of weight and obesity. So it is all intertwined. I wouldn't say it would directly cause a plateau, but managing blood glucose is important. So that would be something we'd want to be managing at the same time with this procedure. In general, what we see is pretty rapid improvement in blood sugar, diabetes, and insulin resistance after this procedure. Most of our patients on diabetes medications can reduce them or come off of them over time.
Very nice. I'm going through and kind of marking off because we've hit some of these already. Okay, so this one is about limited mobility and wanting to know if weight loss is achievable with limited mobility. This person has some joint dysfunction, and they want to know if their current situation would kind of limit the amount of weight they could lose with ESG not being as mobile.
It's a good question because not everybody can, ride a Peloton every day. It's true. And so, yes, you can still lose weight. What I generally advise patients who have reduced mobility is it might be a longer timeline. The path, the rate at which you lose weight could be longer, but you certainly can still lose weight. I also have patients who just choose not to exercise. They don't like it and they don't do it, but can still actually lose the same amount of weight. So everyone's a little bit different. We would always encourage someone, if they're able to maintain a healthy exercise regimen. It definitely helps for most people, but it's not to say you need it to lose weight.
So this question, somebody wants to know, I guess what my regular diet is at this point. And so I don't think I talked about like my macros and things like that. So my regular diet right now at this point, I eat anywhere between about 1,650 to maybe 1,800 calories, give or take, on the particular day. Usually I am burning at least 500 when I'm doing that. It says the watch. I don't necessarily take that for the end all be all, but usually I burn about 500 or so. My macros are around 100, maybe 110 protein, about 165 carbs, and I want to say 45 or 50 fat. If you follow me on my FitnessPal, you can see it. Find me on my FitnessPal, Fierce ESG Diva, all one word. And my diary is open, so you can see what I'm eating every single day, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the great. So you'll be able to see that. But I want to say that's kind of where I am. The majority of my diet, I know the breakdown is about 40% carbs, and I try to, of course, keep that to the better carbs, the complex carbs, the vegetables and the grains and things like that. Don't judge me if you see a donut in there, because there probably was one. So, so that's kind of how I normally eat. I am not low carb whatsoever. 40% of my diet is carbs.
That's important. Yeah, carbs are important. We mostly spend our time encouraging people to eat carbs. Everyone's afraid of them, but you don't need to be. And you need them for many reasons. But to ride that Peloton, you need your carbs. You really
I
do.
do. I do. I also get angry. Y'all, my
Uh-oh.
whole thing just fell. No, I'm good. My light and all that just fell. All right, let's see if I can get my light back. Let's look at the next question while I am trying to do that. Oh, there you go. Will some people not notice a decrease in their appetite? I'm still here. I'm getting my light.
Yeah, no problem. That would be unusual. Most people will see a significant decrease in appetite. So someone who doesn't, there's a couple questions I will generally ask. First thing I'll do is I'll review their medication list, because there are some medications that really ramp up appetite and it's hard to counteract. That would be certain medications for depression, other psychiatric medications, steroids for sure. So there you go, you're back. There are a lot of meds that will really boost appetite, and again, hard to counteract just by making the stomach smaller because they're working through the brain. So that's one thing I always review with patients before the procedure. So someone who's on a medicine like Seroquel, for instance, I will say that's something we need to be cognizant of. It's going to affect the rate that you lose weight. It's just something we need to kind of work around. The other thing would be sleep. Can't emphasize this enough. If you're not getting enough sleep, you're going to be hungry all the time. You're probably not going to lose quite as much weight because your body's under a state of stress. So when we say you need 7 to 8 hours of sleep per night, we really mean that. I mean, that's true of anybody to just function at your best on a daily basis. But when you want to lose weight, you need to sleep, or you just won't lose weight as fast and you'll be hungry.
That's very true. And I don't sleep as much as I should. I'm a night owl, so some of y'all will see I am up quite late, but you are right about that. I think one of the times I did hit kind of a little plateau during that first 3 or 4 weeks, I was stressed at work and I wasn't sleeping enough. And that was one of the things that you told me was I need to go to sleep.
Yes, and just to be clear, Kyra, this is past my bedtime right now. So.
Right, because it's 9:30. I'm so sorry. Yes, because you probably have to be up snatching stomachs early in the morning.
Yeah, no, this is fun though.
Almost finished, y'all. We have probably about 10 more minutes and we'll be done. I'm trying to get to the rest of the questions real quick, and we've hit quite a few of those. So let's see. Does they want to know the portion of the stomach that doesn't get sutured? What happens to it?
The portion that doesn't get sutured, they probably. Well, a common question I get is what happens to the part that is sutured? So it's just kind of folded together and stitched together, and nothing happens to it. It's just a thicker part of the stomach wall at that point. It's still healthy, and we haven't altered it. It's the part that's not sutured, that's where the food's going through. It still can stretch a little bit. The sutured wall can't really move much, but the rest of the stomach can kind of stretch to accommodate the food that you're eating or what you're drinking.
This was a good dietitian question, Laura. If you're in here still, water, broth, soups, etc. Does that count toward the 64 ounces of liquid, the water that's in broth? So broth, soups, and all of that, does that count toward the 64 ounces of hydration?
Sure, it does. Laura can answer that, but yes, of course, they're all liquids. In the beginning of the full liquid stage, when you just start your protein shakes, I usually tell people count the protein too. If you're drinking a Premier protein and it's 11 ounces, count it towards your 64, because you're not going to reach 64 on top of your protein shakes early on. It's too difficult.
Exactly. Oh, popsicles too, y'all. I loved sugar-free popsicles in the very beginning. The Popsicle brand has sugar-free popsicles, and I believe I was told they count as 4 ounces of hydration. So if you just feel like you need to chew, maybe you can chew a popsicle, or you just want something other than sipping, those popsicles are really, really good. The sugar-free ones are really, really good. What about somebody in the military? Would you recommend this this procedure for somebody that's in the military?
It kind of depends. We have many, many patients who are in different branches of the armed services, so I think it depends on what your role is. But certainly it can be an option.
Let's see what question. Um, does hormones play a role in weight loss in older women?
Maybe. It's complex. Yeah, just frankly, just aging in general, metabolism slows. When I say aging, really, once we exit our 20s, believe it or not, each year that goes by, your metabolism slows down a little bit. It's kind of sad to think about. So yeah, as you get further up, your metabolism might be a little slower. It might be a little harder to lose weight. That's not true of everybody. That is not universal. Everybody's different. As far as specific hormones, it's complex, but mostly it's just that our metabolism does tend to slow. So you have to counteract that with exercise.
Next question. Oh, this is a good one. Does this procedure help with GERD?
Yes, actually it does. Did it help you, Kyra?
I didn't have horrible GERD. I would have reflux, especially when I was stressed. I have not had any acid reflux in 11 months. None whatsoever.
Yeah, so this is it's interesting actually. If you look at a surgical sleeve, the VSG, reflux always gets worse. In fact, a third of patients can have severe reflux or require a medication long term. It's because the stomach is this really tight, smooth, banana-shaped tube, and just acid can flow straight up. With the ESG, the stomach is a lower pressure system. It's more of a scrunched, bunched up stomach. And so acid actually it doesn't flow in the same way. And so what we see is reflux gets better. It's really intriguing. There's still a bit to be learned about this. We think in some way when we suture the stomach, we know we're pulling the stomach downward and lengthening the esophagus, and that also reduces reflux. So there's a couple mechanisms, but no question reflux gets better. Now, if you have reflux, will it go away entirely? We couldn't say that necessarily, but most people see it improve.
And there are people in the comments saying that they don't have any reflux after their ESG is. Well, I hope y'all are following and writing down all these people that are in the comments with ESG, because we're always looking for ESGers. They're in here, y'all. What is your experience with someone who, what your experience, why some people are not as successful in maintaining or losing weight after ESG?
I love that question. Yeah, so this is truly a tool. It's something I say over and over again. And so first thing is you have to really harness that tool and put it to work. It's not going to do everything for you. And so people might utilize it to different degrees. Someone who's ultra consistent, like you, Kyra, but just consistent, mentally prepared coming into this, month after month after month, just following the nutrition protocol, exercising, those individuals generally will succeed. I can nearly guarantee it. Now, we do know that some people respond less to a purely restrictive procedure. That is true. It's true of this. It's true of VSG. There's a very small percentage of people who just don't respond as well to just making the stomach smaller. You can't really predict it ahead of time. It's thankfully not common. But generally it's other factors at play if someone's not doing as well. Not to say it's the fault of the patient. It's just that there's a lot of factors at play, and it's really up to us as providers to make sure to help everybody make sure they are on track. There is the technical side too, and we can't deny it. Everyone worries about sutures. I always tell my patients not to worry. If you're at an experienced center, you don't really need to worry about that. But the fact is the procedure actually has to be performed properly or it's not going to do what it needs to do. So there is that other variable.
Dry mouth. This looks like the question. Is dry mouth common after the procedure, or is it a sign of dehydration?
It could be a sign of dehydration. More commonly, it's from some of the medications we provide. Most patients are given a medicine to help with spasm or cramping of the stomach, and it just dries everything out.
I haven't experienced any real dry mouth, but I drink like it's my job now. I'm always with a cup somewhere. So just to make sure that I'm getting in that hydration, because I am a person that forgets to drink. I'm not overly thirsty all the time, so I forget to drink. So I always keep something with me and just drink all the time. But I have not experienced any real dry mouth.
Right. It's just in the first couple of days if you're taking medications, usually the ones we provide.
Exercise restrictions. For example, this person wants to CrossFit. Are there any exercise restrictions? I believe in the
Uh,
first, 6 weeks or so, or first month?
I usually say 2 weeks. You're not going to hurt anything with exercise internally. A lot of people worry about that. You're not going to disrupt the sutures we've placed, but you won't have the energy to do CrossFit after for at least a few weeks, and that just relates to your overall calorie intake. So you just listen to your body. We usually say do light activity for the first 2 weeks, just walk every day, keep it light. After 2 weeks, if your energy is there, you can start pushing it further. But ultimately, you can do anything you want.
And somebody did ask me previously about core work, so I'm guessing that goes with core exercises as well. You're not going to hurt your sutures by doing any
Right?
core work.
It's fine to do.
All right. That question is a question we've already talked about with the 2 weeks of liquid diet, if there's a purpose for it. I think you said just for healing. Somebody was asking that, but because they're ready for some soft food. Probably talk to your doctor and let them know that you're struggling with it, and if you're probably far enough out, you may be able to move into the purees a little bit earlier. Is that correct, Dr. McGowan?
Yeah, always reach out to your provider, and we would have that discussion about whether you can move ahead sooner if needed.
What about pregnancy after ESG?
So pregnancy. So once you've recovered from this procedure and healed, you could certainly safely become pregnant. We wouldn't recommend it as you're trying to lose weight, but you could safely become pregnant. We've had many patients do that. Fertility in general will probably increase as you lose weight. There's that inverse relationship to weight. So you may see increased fertility, but there's no long-term risk to pregnancy after having this procedure.
All right, and I'm going to do maybe about 2 more questions, and then we'll go ahead and end it because it is getting a little bit late. Dr. McGowan has to snatch some stomachs and all that great stuff in the morning. So let's see, 2 questions from here. One is about plastic surgery, tummy tucks and things like that. How long should we wait after ESG to do something like that? And I say we because this is in my future.
So I would wait until you've really reached your goal weight in general. That's probably or close to it. So wait until you get the weight off, and then that would probably be the best time to explore that.
Personally, for me, I said that I wanted to be able to maintain my weight for a year before I looked into that, just to make sure that it's a weight that I am comfortable at and that it's something that I can maintain without having to kill myself with working out or having to, only eat a certain amount of calories, be very, very strict. I wanted to make sure it was a good weight for me. So I'm going to wait a year after I reach my goal weight before I do any of that. And then I think the last question that we'll take, and I'm so sorry if we haven't gotten to all the questions, we had several, but the last question that I'm going to take is one of my favorite questions. It's actually about sagging skin. Y'all, I get this question so much. People are so concerned about sagging skin. So they want to know if I have saggy skin, if sagging skin can be expected. So do you want to speak on that from a medical standpoint, and then I'll say what I have or don't have?
Yeah, it's such a common question, and we understand why it's a concern. No one wants saggy skin, but it depends on the individual. It depends on how much weight you lose. It depends on how fast you lose weight. It depends on your age. It depends on how much you're exercising. There's all of those factors. So it's a hard thing to predict specifically or in general. But usually what we'll say is the rate of weight loss with this is not as fast as a gastric bypass, for instance. You're not just kind of melting away the weight where things will sag pretty early. With this, it's a little more gradual over time. If you're toning, you can help. But if you lose 100+ pounds, there's going to be some loose skin. So I'll let you speak to that.
Yes, so I do have a certain amount of areas of loose skin. I don't have a huge amount that I think that's bothering me. Put it that way. So I have a little bit under my arms. I don't know if you can see, just a little bit. It's just a little right there. That doesn't bother me as much. I do have 2 children, so that means I was pregnant. And so I do have that lower fupa area, the loose skin on my stomach. I've had a picture of my belly button where my belly button looks like a wishbone. kind of now, and you can kind of see the sagging skin there. I have sagging skin on my back, and then in my breast area, they have deflated quite a bit. So this is some, I have some skin there. So I do have plans on having some plastic surgery again in the future. I haven't decided exactly what, and but I'll decide that as I get closer to, I guess, that room and start looking for consultations and all of that. But I would definitely say don't let sagging skin stop you from losing weight. I would rather have a little bit of sagging skin than have that 105 pounds back. Simple as that. I would rather do that. So on that note, on the sagging skin, we'll go ahead and end for the night. Thank you so much, Dr. McGowan. This was really, really fun.
Thank you. This was great. Thanks for inviting me.
It was. I enjoyed this so much. I'm going to leave you all with my my mantra, and if you've seen me post it in the Facebook groups, you know what I'm about to say. ESG is definitely a great tool, but in the words of Dr. Maya Angelou, nothing will work unless you do. Y'all have a good night, and I'll see y'all later. Bye.
Bye-bye.